In a quiet courtroom, a smug judge mocks a janitor defending himself against a flimsy charge, expecting an easy win. But the middle-aged man unassuming, steady unleashes a legal storm, wielding a secret law degree with razor-sharp precision. As evidence stacks high, the judge's scorn fades, and a tense trial turns the room upside down. Will justice prevail? Dive into this tale of hidden brilliance and a reckoning that'll leave you wondering, ready for the twist. The Franklin County Courthouse in Frankfort, Kentucky, stood weathered and proud on a crisp October morning, its red brick facade chipped from decades of rain and neglect. Inside, the air smelled of old wood and dust. The second-floor courtroom, a narrow box of creaking benches and faded green walls. At 9:03 a.m., the gallery filled slow, 40 souls farmers, in flannel retirees, with newspapers, a few suits from the bank on Main. James Carter stood at the defendant's table, 54 wiry, his gray hair cropped close. His navy suit faded at the elbows, a janitor's hands steady on a battered legal pad. He'd worked 30 years at Franklin High, mopping floors, fixing leaks. A quiet man who kept the school's heartbeat alive. Today, he faced a trespassing charge. Earl Grayson, the school's groundskeeper, claimed James lingered in the maintenance shed after hours, up to no good. James knew the truth. Earl wanted him gone, jealous of his steady gig, and had locked him out, then called the sheriff when James went back for his tools. No lawyer took his case. Small town, small money. So he stood alone, his voice his own. Judge Henry Whitaker presided, 68, tall and gaunt. His silver hair swept back his black robe, crisp with starch. His blue eyes sharp behind wire glasses. Known for 30 years as Franklin's iron hand, he ruled with a dry wit that cut deep his Yale law pedigree, a badge he wore loud. He banged his gavel, a worn oak hammer, his voice booming over the hum. Order Commonwealth versus Carter, trespassing. Defendant counsel, James straightened his voice steady low. Representing myself, Your Honor. Henry's lips twitched a smirk, breaking fast. Yourself? Janitor thinks he's Perry Mason, huh? A chuckle rippled Mr. Hargrove. 60 front row grinned. A deputy snorted by the door. Got a broom for a law book, son? James met his eyes, calm, unshaken. Got what I need, sir. Henry leaned forward, his gavel tapping light, his voice dry. Well, shine the floor with it, let's see. Plead? Not guilty, James said, firm, his legal pad open, pencil poised. Proceed, Henry said, waving a hand, his smirk wide. Commonwealth, your case. Prosecutor, Tom Ellis, stood 39, white, slick, in a gray suit. His blonde hair gelled his voice, smooth with small-town polish. Your Honor, Earl Grayson caught Mr. Carter in the maintenance shed October 5th, 8:47 p.m. After hours, no permission. Sheriff's report confirms trespassing clear. Defendants, a janitor, not a tenant, had no business there. Henry nodded, pen scratching his eyes on James. Carter, your turn. Amuse me. James stepped forward, his suit creasing, his voice steady, filling the hush. Wasn't trespassing sheds my workspace? 30 years. October 5th. Earl locked me out, left my tools inside personal property. Went back to get 'em legal right. Kentucky Revised Statutes Section 381.231. Access to retrieve belongings. The gallery stilled. Mrs. Jenkins. S63 paused her knitting. Mr. Hargrove's grin faded. Henry's smirk faltered his pen, pausing, his voice sharp. Statutes? You read that off a mop bucket? No, sir, James said, calm. Pulling a creased paper, a work log, his handwriting neat. Log shows, 8:15 p.m. Finished shift, locked up. Earl's key jammed at 8:47. Went back. Not trespassing necessity. Tom stood fast, his voice rising. Objection, speculation. No proof Earl locked it. Sustained, Henry said quick, his eyes narrowing at James. Stick to facts, none of your janitor tricks. James nodded, slow, his voice steady. Fact, shed's mine to use school contract Exhibit A. He handed up a faded page, 1989 hire letter, custodial duties listed, shed access clear. Fact tools are mine bottom, myself, receipts, Exhibit B. 3 slips yellowed, stapled tight. Henry skimmed his gavel, tapping, soft his voice, dry but thinner. Tools don't mean you wander in Grayson. Word says you didn't belong. Grayson, words off, James said firm, pulling a photo shed door lock askew, time stamped 8:49 p.m. Exhibit C jammed before I got there. Had to pry at legal entry KRS 503.080 defense of property. The gallery murmured. Mrs. Jenkins's needles clacked. A farmer in plaid leaned forward. Tom's smirk faded, his voice sharp. Objection, photos unverified. Overruled, Henry said. Slow his eyes on the image, then James, his smirk gone. Dated admissible. Commonwealth witness. Tom called Earl Grayson, 58, burly. His flannel stained his red face sweaty as he swore in his voice gruff. Caught him 8:47, sneaking in the shed after dark. Told him before. Stay out. James stepped up, his voice calm, precise. Mr. Grayson, October 5th, you locked the shed 8:15. Earl shifted, his hands flexing. Yeah, standard. Locked me out, my tools inside? James asked, steady. His eyes locked. Tools maybe, Earl said gruff, his voice faltering. Didn't see. Receipts say they're mine, James said, handing up Exhibit B again. His voice firm. KRS 381.231, my right to get 'em. You jammed the lock. Why? Didn't jam, old door, Earl snapped fast, his face redder. Photo says different, James said calm. Exhibit C up. Lock bent 8:49 p.m. You said it, wanted me out. Why? Objection. Tom barked, loud, his pen jabbing air. Speculation leading. Sustained, Henry said sharp, his eyes on James narrowing tight. Facts. Carter, no stories. James nodded slow, his voice steady. Fact, you saw me leave 8:15, log proves it. Fact, locks jammed. 8:47. I'm back. No trespass, legal entry. Earl sat silent. His hands clenched, Tom's voice rising. He's twisting it. Grayson, word holds. Henry's pen scratched, his voice, low-edged. Carter Moore? Yes, sir, James said calm, pulling a statute book, dog-eared, his own flipping to 503.080. Defense of property, legal right to enter, retrieve. What's mine? Grayson claim, false, no proof, I lingered. The gallery hushed. 45 now. Mr. Hargrove's paper folded. Mrs. Jenkins's eyes wide. Henry leaned back, his gavel. Still, his voice dry but strained. Commonwealth rebut. Tom stood slow, his voice faltering slight. Grayson, word after hours, no call, no note, trespass. Log says I left 8:15, James said firm, handing it up. Exhibit D, his pencil, neat, times clear. Grayson locked it. 8:47. I'm back, legal. Henry skimmed, his eyes flicking to Tom, then James, his voice low. Recess 15 minutes. The gavel cracked, the gallery buzzing. 45 voices, whispers swelling, a deputy muttering. Janitor sharp. James sat, his legal pad shut, his hands steady, the room's pulse quickening around him. At 9:47 a.m., court resumed, the gallery, thicker, 50. Now benches, groaning the air. Tense with rains, faint tap outside. Henry banged his gavel, his voice steady. His eyes on James, sharper now. Commonwealth, cross Grayson. Tom approached, slow. His voice firm but strained. Earl Carter's log accurate? Earl shifted, his flannel creasing, his voice gruff. Dunno, didn't see it. He's sneaky, always was. 8:47, you saw him? Tom pressed fast, his pen tapping. Yeah, prying the door, Earl said firm, his eyes darting to James. Tom sat smirking faint. Sneaky trespass clear. James stood, his voice calm, cutting through. Mr. Grayson, 8:15. You locked up. Saw me leave? Yeah. Maybe, Earl said, slow, his hands flexing. Maybe, James asked, steady, handing up the log. Exhibit D, 8:15, signed, J. Carter. This, my exit school clocked. You locked it. Jammed it, why? Didn't jam, old lock. Earl said fast, his voice cracking slight. Old lock, 8:49, photo, James said. Calm. Exhibit C up, bent metal, timestamp clear. You said it wanted me out. Why? Objection! Tom barked loud, his voice rising fast. Speculation harassment. Overruled, Henry said, slow, his eyes on Earl. Then James, his gavel tapping light. Answer. Earl swallowed, his face red, his voice low. Didn't know. Lock's old. James nodded, slow, his voice firm. Fact left 815 log proves. Fact back 847. Tools mine. KRS 503.08. Legal entry. No trespass set up. The gallery murmured 60 voices, Mrs. Jenkins clapping soft. Mr. Hargrove nodding slow. Henry's pen scratched his voice, low-edged. Commonwealth more? No, Your Honor, Tom said, slow. Sitting, his voice thin, his papers scattered. Carter's eyes flicked to James, his voice steady. Carter, continue. Yes, sir, James said, calm, nodding to the back. Sarah Mills, school secretary. Sarah stepped up, 47 white, her cardigan loose, her brown hair tied back, her hands steady, as she swore in her voice soft but clear. Sarah Mills, secretary, Franklin High, 12 years. James approached, his voice steady, cutting through. Ms. Mills, October 5th, my shift? 6 a.m. to 8:15 p.m. Sarah said, firm, her eyes on James. Logged out, clocked it myself. Earl Grayson, shed access? James asked. Calm, his legal pad open. No groundskeeper, yard only, Sarah said, steady, her voice rising slight. Shed's yours, contract says. 8:15. Saw me leave? James pressed, his voice firm. Yes, front door with me, Sarah said, nodding, her hands clasped. Earl locked up after saw him. The gallery murmured 60 voices, Mrs. Jenkins, clapping soft, Mr. Hargrove, nodding slow. James handed up the log. Exhibit D 815, Sarah's initials faint but clear. Exhibit D confirms. Grayson locked. Jammed. Why? Sarah paused, slow, her voice low. Heard him, week before Carter's out, he'll fix it. Objection! Tom barked loud, his voice rising fast. Hearsay speculation. Sustained, Henry said, sharp, his eyes on Sarah, then James. Facts. Carter, no chatter. James nodded, calm, his voice steady. Fact, left 8:15, Sarah saw. Fact, Shed's mine contract proves Exhibit A. Fact, lock jammed photo, Exhibit C. No trespass, legal entry. Sarah sat, her eyes on James, steady, a faint nod back. Henry's pen scratched, his voice low-edged. Commonwealth Cross. Tom stood slow, his voice faltering slight. Ms. Mills, sure it's 8:15? Yes, clocked him, Sarah said firm, her hands steady, her eyes on Tom. Earl could have seen him after? Tom pressed fast, his pen tapping. No, left with me. Earl locked alone, Sarah said, steady, her voice clear. Tom sat silent, his fight fading, his papers still. Henry's eyes flicked to James, his voice steady. Carter more. Yes, sir, James said, calm, stepping forward, his voice rising slight. Earl's story, 8:47 me, sneaking falls. Left 8:15. Sarah proves, Exhibit D, back 8:47. Tools mine. Exhibit B legal. KRS 503.080 lock jammed. Exhibit C. Grayson doing Exhibit E roster, proves Grayson word false. No proof, law says I'm clear. The gallery, hushed 65 now, a farmer in plaid nodding. Mrs. Jenkins' eyes wide. Henry leaned back, his gavel, still his voice low, strained. Commonwealth rebut. Tom stood slow, his voice thin, faltering. Grayson saw after hours, trespass. 8:15 left, Sarah. Saw James, said firm. Exhibit D up. 8:15 clear, 8:47 back, legal, KRS 503.080. Grayson locked. Set me up, no proof otherwise. Henry's eyes narrowed, his pen pausing, his voice steady-edged. Recess, 1 hour lunch. The gavel cracked the gallery, buzzing 65 voices. Whispers loud, Mr. Hargrove muttering, he's winning. James sat, his legal pad shut, his hands steady, the room's tension coiling tight. At 11:47 a.m., court resumed, the gallery thicker, 70. Now benches groaning, the air tense with anticipation, rain drumming outside. Henry banged his gavel, his voice deep, filling the hush. His eyes on James, sharper, still, a flicker of something new. Respect maybe, beneath the stern mask. Commonwealth closing? Tom stood slow, his voice faltering, his gray suit creased, now his blonde hair limp. Your Honor, Earl Grayson saw Carter 847 shed. After hours, no. Right trespass clear, sheriff's report backs. Carter's logs, photos, tricks, not proof. Grayson word holds. Tom sat, his voice fading, his papers scattered, his fight gone. Henry's eyes flicked to James, his voice steady low. Carter, you're close? James stood, his suit creasing, his voice steady, rising clear, filling the rooms. Hush. Your Honor, Earl Grayson locked me out 8:15. Sarah Mills saw Exhibit D sheds mine. Exhibit A tools mine. Exhibit B went back. 8:47 legal. KRS 503.080 lock jammed. Exhibit C. Grayson set. No trespass. Exhibit E roster proves. Grayson word false. No proof law. Says I'm clear. The gallery hushed 70 voices. Mrs. Jenkins nodding. Mr. Hargrove's eyes wide. A farmer clapping soft. Henry leaned back, his gavel still, his pen scratching, slow, his voice low steady.
Commonwealth rebut?
No, Your Honor, Tom said low, sitting, his voice a whisper, his paper still. Henry's eyes narrowed, his voice steady-edged. Carter, anything else? Yes, sir, James said, calm, stepping forward, his voice firm, cutting through. One more. My rights, not my job laws. Not a title. KRS 511.060 trespass. Needs intent, none. Here, Grayson, intent set me up law. Says I win. The gallery murmured 75, now a woman in a scarf clapping, Mr. Hargrove, nodding loud. Henry leaned back, his gavel, tapping slow. His eyes on James, steady searching. Courts in recess, verdict at 1 p.m. The gavel banged, the gallery, erupting 75 voices, whispers swelling. Mrs. Jenkins cheering soft, he's got it. James sat, his legal pad shut, his hands steady, the room's tension peaking sharp. At 1:02 p.m., court resumed, the gallery, packed 80 now benches, groaning, the air electric with anticipation. Rain steady outside, a low drum against the windows. Henry banged his gavel, his voice deep, filling the hush. His eyes on James, steady, a crack in his stern mask, humility, faint but real. Order Commonwealth versus Carter, trespassing verdict. The gallery hushed 80 voices. Mrs. Jenkins's needles, still. Mr. Hargrove's paper, folded tight. A farmer in plaid, leaning forward, his breath held. Henry leaned forward, his pen still, his voice steady, low, cutting through the silence like a blade. Courts heard Commonwealth claims. Carter trespassed. 8:47 p.m. October 5th, shed after hours, Grayson word. Sheriff's report, defendant Carter says no left. 8:15, Sarah Mills saw Exhibit D sheds, his Exhibit A tools. His Exhibit B back, 8:47 legal. KRS 503.080 lock jammed. Exhibit C, Grayson set. Exhibit E roster. Proves KRS 511.060. No intent. Law's clear. Henry paused, his eyes on James. Steady, his voice rising slight firm. Evidence. Carter's, logs, photos, roster tight. Sarah Mills, solid. Grayson, word shaky. No proof, intent lacking law. Holds KRS 503.080 legal entry. KRS 511. Trespass. Commonwealth fails. Burden. Unmet verdict, not guilty, case dismissed. Carter prevails. The gavel cracked loud. Final, the gallery, erupting, 80 voices, cheers swelling. Mrs. Jenkins standing, clapping loud. Praise God. Mr. Hargrove shouting, damn right. A farmer in plaid stomping his boots. A woman in a scarf weeping soft. Tom slumped, his face gray, his papers scattered, his fight gone. James sat, his legal pad shut, his hands steady, his eyes on Henry, calm, unshaken. Henry stayed, his gavel, still, his eyes on James, steady. A faint nod breaking through, his voice low, almost lost in the roar. Well played, counselor. The gallery buzzed, 80 voices, cheers fading to whispers. Mrs. Jenkins hugging, Mr. Hargrove, a deputy, grinning soft. James stood slow, his suit creasing, shaking Sarah's hand, her smile warm. "You did it." Tom stormed out, chair scraping his gray suit, rumpled his voice a mutter, waste of time, lost in the slam of the door. Henry rose, slow, his robe swishing, his eyes lingering on James. Then, the empty stand, his steps heavy to Chambers, the janitor's words. Laws, not a title, ringing loud in the silence he left. At 1:17 p.m., the courtroom emptied, 80 scattering, Mrs. Jenkins lingering. "You're a hero, son." Her needles clicking again. James stood, his legal pad tucked under his arm, his voice low to Sarah. "Just wanted what's mine. Just wanted." He walked out, slow, steady, the hall's wood creaking under his boots. The rain's drone softening outside the courthouse, a quiet shell now. Henry sat in Chambers' desk, cluttered, a single bulb, flickering, his Yale diploma, framed on the wall, gold-faded. He stared at it, 1968, top of his class, 30 years ruling Franklin, his wit a blade, his pride a wall. James Carter, janitor, Yale, 92, shattered at his log, his law, his quiet steel cutting deeper than Henry's scorn. He saw it, mockery turned to dust, bias laid bare. A man he'd dismissed, schooling him in his own court. He leaned back, slow, his hands trembling, slight. The janitor's face, gray hair, steady eyes etched in the silence. Next day, 8:56 a.m., the courthouse buzzed again, 50 back, a new docket. Henry's gavel banging sharp, his voice steady but softer now. Exhibit 18, black theft charge, stood his public defender fumbling. Henry leaned forward, slow, his eyes on the boy, his voice low, cutting through. "You got a story, tell it straight." The kid spoke, nervous, clear. Henry listened, pen scratching, his nod faint but real. His ruling, fair probation light. The gallery murmured 50 voices, Mrs. Jenkins smiling. "He's different." James wasn't there, back at Franklin High. Mop in hand, his degree tucked away, his fight. Won his path quiet, open still. Henry stayed late, Chambers. Dim as Yale frame a shadow, now his mind on Carter, janitor, lawyer mirror. Change crept slow, real, his ruling softer. His wit dulled his eyes, sharper on the voiceless. James mopped, steady, silent, his win. A ripple, not a wave, his story, a question, where next? The courthouse stood, brick-chipped, rain falling. The town watching, waiting, justice shifting, fragile, alive. Thank you all for watching this video. Please comment and let me know what you think about this story. Please like and subscribe to watch more great content on my channel.